those likes. Hello, hello. Hi, everyone. I'm excited for today's training. I have been speaking with a lot of clinicians that are early on in their practice recently. Some folks that have decided 2023 is the year to go ahead and launch their practices, or maybe to up-level their marketing and really start putting themselves out there in a new way, particularly in the private pay space. And so if that is you, you're in the right spot. I'm really happy you're here. If you are joining me live right now, please say hello in the comments. Let me know where you're joining from. And please know that one of the benefits of you getting to be here live is you get to ask questions. I want to support you and help you kind of get unstuck in any areas of your marketing. And so if there are questions that come up as I'm making my way through today's topic, please use the comment section to ask. And I will check out those comments at the end of the training so that we can chat virtually about what you're thinking about. Now, before I dive in, if this is your first time joining us, we have quite a few new faces here in the group. We're actually coming up on 10,000 members, which is just wild to think about. Hi, my name's Anna, and I'm so thrilled that you're here. The Get Booked Out community is really designed to be a supportive place where you feel empowered to market yourself in a way that isn't just effective, because I want to see you get private pay, ideal fit, full fee clients, but is also authentic to you and the work that you do, and that feels aligned with who you are as a person, who you are as a clinician, and the work that you truly love to do and that lights you up. So that's what we're about around here. Like I said, my name's Anna. I get to lead this community and hopefully serve as a useful resource as you work to grow your practice. So let's see, got lots of folks joining us. Wow, North Carolina, Dallas, Kansas City, Maryland, Florida, Southern California. Wonderful. I'm so thrilled all of you are here. And thanks for carving out a bit of your Friday to be with me. If you're catching this later, awesome. One of the cool parts about these videos is they live on. So if you're catching the replay, will you do me a favor and drop that hashtag replay into the comments? That will make sure that if you have any questions, even if it's a month or a year from now, I can come back and support you. I want these to be useful, even if you're not able to be here live. So we're talking today about where to begin with marketing your practice. That is the big question, right? As you start putting yourself out there and making this decision, either jumping all the way into a full-time practice or perhaps launching a side hustle, part-time practice. The number one thing that I hear from new practitioners in those stages is they feel overwhelmed, right? Can you resonate with that feeling overwhelmed? There's so much information out there. I think I saw a list one time of like 100 things a therapist can do to market their practice. No wonder you're overwhelmed, because someone's telling you there's 100 different things you can or should be doing. How do you decide what's actually worth your time? How do you not just feel immediately burnt out trying to check every single box? And unfortunately, or maybe fortunately, depending on your style, the advice varies depending on who you're talking to, right? So I'm curious, will you say yes in the comments if you started a Facebook page for your practice right away, because you felt like you just needed to? Did you start a Facebook page before maybe even doing anything else? Anyone else do that? Because it's something that I hear often, like, well, I haven't done anything yet, but I do have a Facebook page because apparently I should. Our dogs are coming to say hello. Jen, yes, Leah did too. Kirsten as well. Yeah, it's common because you're like, well, I guess I need to be on social media. And what I want you to know, and the big thing that we're about here in this group, is that growing your practice is not one size fits all. And what a beautiful thing, right? We can lean into your strengths as a person and as a clinician in your marketing, but there are some ways to really evaluate different strategies and to determine where to really spend your time and energy, because I want to see you get the right clients. I want to see you get those clients quickly, and I want to see you get them in a way that feels aligned with your energy, right? And that you're not just burning out on the marketing side and then having nothing left to give your clients. So if you're preparing to launch your practice, or maybe you're in those beginning stages, let's be honest, like, you need results quickly, right? You don't have the luxury of, depending on some steady stream of referrals from being in this space for years, or just knowing that if you make one post on social media, a client will come. Like, you don't have that luxury, right? What I want to tell you is that even if you're running across those lists of 100 things you could be doing, it's really important not to jump into everything at once. Of course, first and foremost, to protect your time and energy so that you're not just, like I said, spinning your wheels and burning out, but also because what I've found to be true, and I found this in my own business, I found this in so many practices of the clinicians that I support, is that if you can do a few things really well, instead of a bunch of things, average, subpar, you will actually get better results. And so I'll share just an example of my own business, which I recognize is not a therapy practice, but really has translated into the work I do with clinicians. I've had people tell me I am crazy for not being on Instagram for my business. I've had people tell me I'm crazy that I don't use Pinterest, and all of these kind of different strategies. I don't blog. I would so much rather jump on here and talk to you guys in a video than write it out. I focus on this Facebook group. I have a website. And I send emails every week, and hopefully you get some of those and those have been useful for you. That's all I do. It's all I do. And instead of feeling like, you know what, I am going to give into the pressure and I'm going to start posting on Instagram, I know that that's not aligned with my energy or what I have time or bandwidth for. And so I've just decided, I'm going to dedicate myself to doing these couple of things really well. And the referrals, they come in. And I've seen that be true for clinicians as well. When they focus on just a handful of things and they do them really well, the results come so much faster and so much more reliably than for the people that are scattered and doing all types of things. So if you're here right now and you feel scattered in your marketing, or you feel overwhelmed because you feel like you need to do everything, please hear me that if we can just select a couple of key things and you can commit to doing those well, you're probably going to get more results. They're probably going to be higher quality clients, and you're probably going to be a happier person and clinician at the end of the day anyway. So that's what I want you to know today. Lots of people, started an Instagram. Jesse doesn't want to blog, want to focus on your website, maybe a Facebook page. Absolutely. You're allowed to focus in the ways that make sense for you. And we're going to get into today sort of how you can evaluate whether or not something is worth your time. But there's something I want to talk about before you get into actually marketing yourself. Now, I know that you hear everyone talk about a niche, and I am 100% on that train. If you've been around here for a while, you know that clarifying your therapy niche is so incredibly important to your marketing. But before doing that, sometimes niche, like kind of establishing and refining your niche, is going to happen a little bit later in the process. If you are brand new to this process and you're just considering marketing, what is really, really important, and this is what you need to do before you even put yourself out there, is you've got to get clear on the types of clients you want to be bringing in. Now, I recognize that that thought exercise is not immediately going to turn into clients. And so it can be like, I'll worry about that later. I'll specialize later. I'll think about my clients later. I just need clients. Guess what? Scattered marketing equals scattered results. And so if your marketing isn't talking to a particular type of person and is trying to be all things to all people, you're going to get scattered results. So on the flip side, if you know who you're trying to attract, even if maybe right now it's really hard to put that into words, we're here to support you in doing that, you will get better results. One of my favorite exercises to do, actually a couple of exercises depending on sort of what your history coming into practice looks like. One, look at intake forms from the clients that you have enjoyed the most. I know that if you sit here for a couple of moments, a couple of clients probably come to mind that just, if you could work with clients like them for the rest of your career, you would be so excited. Go visit their intake forms and see what they talked about. What did they say was coming, was bringing them in? What is it about them that you enjoyed so much? Why were you able to do such good work? Another thing I really love to do is sort of audit any existing marketing that has served you well in the past. So if you have the benefit right now of preparing to market and already having a couple of clients on your caseload, review where those clients came from. This is one of my favorite questions to ask clinicians. They'll be like, I only have like 8 clients on my caseload and I really like to be like 12 to 15. I say, okay, where'd those 8 come from? How'd those 8 find you? And sometimes they're like, oh, you know what? My Psychology Today profile or this referral source. That can be a helpful way to kind of lean into what's already working, right? So if you have the luxury of having some clients on your caseload already, take a look at where those came from. But it's going to be really important that you go into this process with an idea in your mind of who you're trying to attract, because that will clarify the things that you do, and it will actually make the marketing that you choose to move forward on much, much more effective. So figuring out the types of clients you want to bring in, you've got to do that first. And like I said, it might feel a little bit frivolous when the fact is you need clients and you need to pay your bills, but I promise that if you start there, your results will actually be better. So spend some time on that. If you have any questions on that, again, feel free to drop that in, but we'll spend the bulk of our time now here on deciding what to do. right? What do you actually do? What do you pick from the list of 100 things you need or you can do in order to grow your practice? There's just 2 things that you need to focus on and that you can evaluate things by. The first is what I call longevity. Can this strategy work on its own? Can it get better over time? And I'm going to get into sort of what that means, but that's a question we need to have in your mind. And then the other one is this actually going to turn into clients? So I call those client generating activities. Just because something is a marketing strategy doesn't actually mean it will directly translate to new clients, right? And I don't want you, especially in this phase of your marketing, dedicating time, energy, even money to things that are not going to directly translate to clients. And so we've got to evaluate that too. You can wait and choose to add those other strategies later, but so often, like I've shared, my clients find that they don't need to because they've optimized and focused on just a couple of things that they don't actually need those other strategies. But those are the 2 questions we need to ask. Does this have longevity? Can this potentially work on its own? And is this going to directly translate to clients? If the answer to both of those things, one or both of those things, is yes, that points us in the direction of, you know what, this is a worthwhile worthwhile strategy as you begin to market. And remember, we are talking to people that are early on in this process. Maybe you've been in practice for a bit, but are really honing in on marketing, or maybe you're preparing to launch. But especially in those seasons, those very critical seasons of growing your practice, these are the 2 questions we need to be able to answer. So let's look at some of the most common strategies together. Why don't we? And we'll evaluate whether they have longevity or client generating activity with them. First and foremost, my favorite topic ever in the whole world, a website. Your websites are so important, especially if your goal is to be private pay. And guess what? Longevity, absolutely. They can work on their own. You can get clients and traffic while you are sleeping at night or on vacation or in session with a client. Absolutely. And can they turn into clients directly? Absolutely. A website is a perfect example of something that meets both of those criteria. You got to have a website. You got to have one, especially if the goal is to be private pay. And one of the reasons is because it's one of the only strategies that does both of these for you. And we talk a lot about why a website is important, but if we're using these criteria, it meets those. And so that points us to it being a worthwhile thing to focus on. The next one, directories. Private pay clients are on Psychology today. I will die on that hill. The success you have on directories depends on a lot of different factors, but the fact is your clients are there. And so that means that it's a client generating activity. We know that if people are landing on Psych today, they're looking for a therapist, right? They're ready to take that next step. So why would we not want to meet them, at their point of need then? So Psychology Day is a great example of a client generating activity. Now let's talk about social media. A lot of you talked about, focusing on Instagram or Facebook or just like standing those up and creating one because you felt like you need to. Guess what? Longevity wise, social media is for the most part fleeting. These days, a post usually lives and dies in about 24 hours. So that means you are in a constant grind of creating new content. You know this. If you've gotten into these yet, you've got to be on your A game all the time. Can social media eventually start to run on its own? Depends on how you look at it. But the fact is you have to be constantly pouring in to that strategy in order for it to ever flow out. It can't just sit there and grow on its own or be effective on its own with just a little bit of foundational work. The other thing that I really want you to remember about social media, and I love social media. Hello, we're here on Facebook together. But what I really want you to remember is that for the purposes of therapy, it's actually not likely to bring in direct referrals. This is not true for every single clinician. Absolutely not. Like I said, not one size fits all. But in general, your therapy clients, your ideal clients, those people you were calling to mind in step 1 of this process, aren't on Instagram looking for a therapist. They're not on Facebook looking for a therapist. And if they are, and they're like, oh, I'll follow this clinician, it's not because they're looking to actually engage with you for therapy. It's because they're looking for some of those helpful tips and tricks that are great to share, but aren't necessarily going to turn into someone in the seat, engaging in one-to-one therapy with you. So social media actually doesn't meet either of those criteria for us. And that's why the title of this training was Where to Start with Your Marketing, No Social Media Required. If you don't like social media, you don't have to do it. Not now and not ever. Please hear that from me. If you love social media, amazing. Pour yourself into it because it can be a useful strategy. But please, just because you feel like it's what you've heard or seen, please know that you don't have to. If you take nothing else away from today, let it be that. You don't have to post on Facebook and Instagram if you don't want to. And you can still grow your practice and get the full fee ideal fit clients you want. Next up, let's talk about this idea of niching. We talk about niching all the time in this group because I have seen it be so critical in attracting full fee clients in particular. But one of the reasons that niches are so beneficial is because they have longevity to them. That if you can really establish yourself in working with a particular type of person or in a particular type of specialty or providing a certain type of service or outcome, you can become known, and that can sort of infiltrate all of the marketing that you do, the conversations you have with other people, the clarity of your website, like it infuses and strengthens basically all of your marketing. And so does a niche is it's not exactly a strategy, but is it going to turn into direct clients? Maybe not, but it does have the ability to strengthen and improve the results of your marketing on its own. So we would consider that a yes on that longevity side. Let's talk about networking next, because networking is really powerful. And I will remind you that I have yet to meet a fully booked private pay clinician that isn't well connected. Getting connected to other people, other clinicians, your community, it's an important piece of marketing. You can absolutely build most of your practice through your website and through things like SEO. But being well connected is almost always going to serve you really well. Longevity, absolutely, because it gets more effective with less effort over time. You just build relationship and maintain them, right? And people's awareness of you grows. And so networking is really powerful on that side. And then client generating, absolutely. If the right people know about you and they know about your niche and they know about the types of clients you want to bring in, they know to send those folks your way. And so it's just a really powerful strategy and something that is in these early stages of your practice, very worth putting your effort into. Google My Business, or now Google Business Profile. Let's talk about that one. That's a huge one. We have some trainings here in the group and people talk about it a lot. Different if you are an online clinician these days. But if you do have any sort of in-person component or an in-person office of some kind, you can leverage the power of Google My Business, which of course is going to longevity wise, going to live up there on Google and gain traction over time. And then people are actually clicking on, book now from Google Business Profile listings. So we know that if someone's looking for anxiety therapy Nashville and my Google Business Profile shows up, that, we're going to be connecting with someone who actually is looking for what I need. So again, we would consider that a client generating activity. Let's talk about two more, and then I would love to answer any questions you may have and explore this a little bit more as far as what to do next. The next one's SEO, another thing that I love to talk about here in this group, closely tied to an effective website. SEO, search engine optimization. It's about making your website as friendly to Google and other search engines as possible. And one of the best things about SEO is that it does get better over time. Clinicians that I talk to who have had websites for 8 to 10 years, maybe those websites weren't even as strong as they could be, but just the amount of time that they have been out in the world, in the internet, on the internet, they have gained SEO traction just in that way. And so in terms of longevity, it absolutely has the potential to increase in effectiveness over time and work on its own. You get clients for free. Like, why wouldn't we want SEO, right? We get clients for free that are looking for what you need. And that also means that it's a client generating activity, because if someone types in, again, anxiety therapy Nashville, and boom, my website's right there, people are going to click on that because they're looking for anxiety therapy. And I will have been able to make that connection. So SEO is super powerful. And then finally, another strategy that I hear some clinicians sort of playing around with and considering early on is this idea of email marketing. Now, I mentioned that this is a powerful strategy for me in my business, although what I do at Walker Strategy Co. supporting clinicians is different than what you offer in a one-to-one setting for therapy clients. But email marketing is similar to social media in that it's a bit fleeting. You're only in front of those potential clients when you hit their inbox. And so you have to be regularly pouring into the inbox in order to maintain that awareness. So similar to, you're always having to create content. And it also, as compelling as it might be to, have a list of emails, people that are signing up for email lists are often not quite ready for therapy. And so there's some nurturing required. People are unlikely, it does depend on your strategy here, but they're unlikely to sign up for something and then immediately become a client. So it's not exactly a direct client generating activity, and therefore not usually something that someone early on in practice would necessarily need. So those are the ones that we've reviewed. We talked about website, Psych Today, social media, niche, networking, Google My Business, SEO, email marketing, some of the bigger sort of strategies that are often talked about. And the key ones that rise to the surface: website and SEO, Psych Today and directories, having a clear niche, and networking. Those are the main ones that are jumping out here. So where do you begin? What do you do with all this? I've just run through a whole bunch of information. Is that anything that you bump up against, any strategy you consider, any expert you run across who tells you you need to do XYZ, you ask yourself, does this have potential for longevity? Can this eventually work on its own? And is this going to directly result in client referrals? And if the answer to both is yes, that's a sign it's a really great strategy. And if the answer is yes to at least one of those, then that's a sign that it could be a viable thing for you. If the answer is no, not really, please don't feel like you have to spend your time there, even if people are telling you you should, because I want you to actually, get results. So my recommendation for you is to figure out who you're trying to attract, to get clear on that niche, because I promise it will serve all of your marketing better. And then focus on the things that have longevity and that have that CGA, that client generating activity factor to them. The first of which is going to be your website, especially if your goal is to be private pay. I really want to encourage you not to get distracted by the other 98 things on the list, right? The other shiny objects out there, the things that people are talking about or touting. Because when you focus on, again, just doing a couple of things really, really well, and then build if you need to, you're going to have a foundation that is already beginning to work on its own. And that is the power of good marketing. And that's what so many of the successful clinicians that I've supported have been able to create. So they're not constantly grinding away at their marketing, but they're actually building what I call like a system that is playing together. The gears are turning together and it's gaining traction, even if they're not constantly pouring into it. So putting some work in up front to those key strategies and letting them start to work on its own. It's like a locomotive. Sometimes it'll be a little slow to churn, but then it will pick up that momentum and it's able to keep churning and chugging along all on its own while you're focused on the other parts of the work that you do that you actually really love. So that's what I want to empower you on. If you are looking for more support on this, I go more in depth. I offer examples and more guidance in my Private Pay Marketing 101 workshop. A really great thing to sign up for. It's about 45 minutes long. Maybe carve out a little bit of time this weekend to watch that. You can find it at walkerstrategyco.com/101. Just the three numbers there. That will walk you through this process, what I call my 3C framework that you'll learn about, and how to start putting that into practice in your marketing and really starting to see those gears turn and that machine start to run. So, let's talk. Jesse said, what about referrals from Alma or Headway for insurance clients? They seem to be directories, or what other directories do you recommend? Absolutely, Jesse. Alma and Headway have served clinicians who accept insurance really, really well. It's important that anytime you have the opportunity to talk about the work that you do in the form of like a directory listing, that you're speaking really clearly to that person we talked about at the beginning that you're clear on. Every directory is a little bit different. Psych Today is my number one recommendation, simply because it is the largest and most popular, and therefore the most clients are showing up there. But there's the Monarch one from Simple Practice, which I think might be free if you're a Simple Practice user. Alma and Headway, Therapy Den. I've heard of Inclusive Therapists. I've heard of the what are some of the others? Therapy for Black Girls, Good Therapy, Mental Health Match. Everything aside from Psychology Today definitely gets varied results. Some people swear by them and they turn into a lot of clients. Others don't as much. But anytime you're writing a directory profile, do it with that ideal client in mind. Don't try to be all things to all people, but instead talk to that type of client that you have so enjoyed in the past and you want to have more of. That's why having that idea and that person in the back of your mind can be so powerful, because it will actually make those profiles more valuable. Good question, Jen. I didn't even talk about Google Ads. Paid advertising can be really, really beneficial for clinicians. It's unlikely to be a really viable option for you right out of the gate. So if you are someone who is just launching or just now beginning to market, I don't recommend running Google Ads unless your website is converting well organically. So unless people are already coming to your website, realizing you're the therapist for them and booking with you, I don't want to I don't want you to put money into getting people to a website that isn't doing its job. And so I want to validate that your website is performing well before putting money into getting people there. Once it is, Google Ads can be a really powerful strategy. Of course, there's cost associated with it. There's also strategy, pretty deep strategy. And so my blanket statement is leave it to the pros. Find someone who specializes in Google Ads. There are some folks that specialize in them for therapists in particular. But it can cost you a lot of time and money and headaches to try and figure out on your own. It can sort of just become a money pit. So usually investing in an expert, if that's a route you decide to go, is going to serve you better in the long term. But again, I recommend not jumping into that unless you're seeing results from your website organically. So we're not just pouring people into something that isn't converting. Definitely. Belinda, how can I market to businesses to take me in to do therapy for employees? Belinda, that's definitely a different type of marketing for sure. Anytime you're marketing to like other organizations or businesses, it's going to be a little bit of a different approach than with one-to-one therapy clients. And often what I found is those types of services are mostly fed by networking and by creating connections where people know about you and think about you for these services, as opposed to like going to look in Google. It's just not something that as many people do. And so that is really going to be about like boots on the ground, forming connections, being useful, offering, your expertise and your guidance to those people, and just focusing on relationship before sort of, like letting relationship lead that eventual conversation about being able to, to support their organization in one way or another. But usually those types of services, as I've seen, have been fed by networking and building relationship. Jen said, we have great luck on Therapy Den. I think it depends on the age range of your ideal client. It absolutely does. And Therapy Den gets a lot of traffic. And I think they even have a free version still. So any of those free directories, sign up for them. It's not hurting you. We know that for sure. So any of those free directories, it's absolutely worth signing up for and testing out. And even most of the paid ones, you have a free trial for some amount of time. I know Psych Today, I think you can get 3 or 6 months. Mental Health Match has a 6-month. So it's worth trying, optimizing, tweaking that profile and seeing if it can serve you in your geographic area, in your niche, in your age range, all of those kinds of things. Definitely. Wonderful. Any other questions for me, friends? I hope this has been a useful time for you. And if nothing else, you're feeling encouraged that you don't have to post on Instagram all the time if you don't want to. Like I said, if you want this, some more in-depth guidance on this, along with some examples, jump into Private Pay Marketing 101. Just head to Walker Strategy Co. I'll drop it in the comments. walkerstrategyco.com/101. That will be a great way to spend 45 minutes of your weekend, maybe, as you're carving out this idea of growing your practice. If there is more that we can be doing to support you, either as a result of this video or on another topic, please use this group. I try to be, in here and answering questions as much as I possibly can, but you'll also find, if you haven't yet, that this community is amazing and has so much collective knowledge and expertise as well. So if you've got questions on your marketing, please bring them to us. Let us know how we can be supporting you. And I hope this has been a useful time for you. Everyone have a really, really wonderful weekend, and I'll talk to you next time.